Hello, my kako. Kalamai, my name is Donovan Preza. I'm an instructor at Kapiolani Community College. Been studying the Mahele for a long time, probably the last 15, 20 years. I'm a geographer, and I find geography and Hawaiian studies to be very pili things, right? The central question for geography is the man-land relationship, and aloha aina, the man-land relationship, right? So here to talk story today. I'm used to giving these presentations with a PowerPoint and visuals because there's so much detail, and I'm very primary source document based, and I don't have the luxury of showing you guys those documents. So today is kind of a, well, he said it's true, so it must be true kind of presentation, right? Because I can't show you the documents, but wanted to start off today and just kind of talk story. I'm not here to lecture or to talk. I'm kind of here to listen in a sense, and what kind of questions. We have a more intimate setting, so what kind of questions you guys might have. And if I can get 3 or 4 of those, then I can talk story around those questions and kind of get to answers rather than me dumping fact, information. The thing I would like you guys to get from today, from me, is normally the Mahele is something that is a topic that disassociates us from connecting to our ancestors. We see it as something that's foreign imposed. We see it as something that wasn't ours. We see it as something in that way that we cannot connect to. And for me, the Mahele is something we should connect to. And not because I want to connect to it, but because the evidence and the documentation is there. Our ancestors left us a legacy, and in how the mo'olelo about the Mahele has been told, that's, in my mind, caused us to not connect to that story. And then if we're not connecting to that story, we're not connecting to Kawikeoli Kameme III, we're not connecting to our history, we're not connecting to Aina, we're not connecting to Aloha Aina, we're not connecting to those kinds of things, yeah? So there's 4 questions, roughly. There's more, but the Mahele really needs a ho'oponopono. And there's about 4 questions that if you tell me the answer to any one of the 4 questions, I can 99.9% tell you what your answer to the other 3 questions are. And that's what I mean about a ho'oponopono, because all those questions get entangled and they start feeding each other. Was the Mahele bad? Yes, Hawaiians didn't get land, blah, 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 blah. And all these things then reinforce each other, and then we don't connect to the Mahele, yeah? So I'd like you guys to just take 30 seconds to a minute and think to yourself, Mahele good, bad? More important, why? How do you know good? How do you know bad? What informs that mo'olelo that says bad, good? I would guess I'm probably one of 3 people in the room, and the other 2 know me, that think the Mahele is good. I may be wrong on that, right? But for a minute, let's think to yourself, Mahele good, bad? More importantly, why? How do we know the Mahele is bad? What has come to shape that for us? Close your eyes. Mahele is good, raise your hand. Okay? Hands down. As I thought, everyone who knows me, hands went up. Everybody who I don't have a relationship, hands was down, right? So why do we think Mahele bad? We got at it there, right? One of the other questions, did Hawaiians get land? Who got land? Not the Hawaiians. Hawaiians didn't get land, Mahele bad. What if I told you Hawaiians got land? Does that change your mind for the Mahele? Oh, Mahele is good now. Nope, because that story is too strong still, right? I can show you all the evidence. One of the fun things I like to do is, how many of us have a story of loss of land in our family? Everybody's hand goes up, right? And I tell you guys jokingly, you're all liars. Hawaiians never get land. If Hawaiians didn't get land, how do we lose it? How do we all have a story of loss of land if we didn't get land? We got land. That's why your hand up went up when I said, how'd you lose it? You could not have lost land if you weren't in possession of land in the first place, right? And these are the kinds of simple things that we don't really think about, right? We just let the general grand narrative drive. Mahele bad, Hawaiians didn't get land. Did my family get land? Yes, 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 but we lost it. How we lost it, different question. But we don't ask how we lost the land because we assume we never get land. You're only going to ask the question, how'd Hawaiians lose land, if you're not coming from the assumption or the place that Hawaiians didn't get land, right? So you see how all of this stuff reinforces? And if you don't peel it away layer by layer, it becomes this jumbled mess of... But when you look at the evidence, Hawaiians got land. I can show you the documents. 160,000 acres of royal patent grants, 28,000 acres here. The people of Haena, if you guys have read Carlos Andrade's book, all the people of Haena went into a hui, bought land from the Konehiki. No can, Hawaiians never have money, right? All of these side stories and side things that affect our identity, right? Central to this question of Mahele is all of these side stories that affect our identity, right? If you think about land and how important land is to our identity, then that's how important this story and interrogating this story of the Mahele is, right? All the people of Haena went into a hui, bought land from the Konehiki. But I thought Hawaiians didn't have money. I thought Hawaiians didn't understand the system. I thought Hawaiians were incompetent. I thought Hawaiians no can. I thought Hawaiians were basically incompetent, no can, right? But they did. 167,000 acres royal patent grants, but they did. But Hawaiians never get land, Hawaiians, right? So you really, really gotta, because land is so crucial to identity, to our Hawaiian identity, Papa and Wakea, Haloa, Kalo, Aloha Aina, right? All of this stuff, the relationship between man and land. We should really know why we think the way we think about that central story, Mahele, right? When Hawaii transitions to private property. Questions, comments before we move on? That's kind of my main point. If you leave here with something, leave here questioning why you think the way you do about that story. Because stories shape your identity. Stories shape how you think, how you see, how you interact, right? The land story is one of the most important stories, and it shapes how you think, right? I would bet, I'm not going to ask you guys to do it, but I would bet 99% of the people in this tent would agree with the statement Hawaiians didn't own land, right? Let's do the exercise. Hawaiians didn't own land. Think about this. You just said, subconsciously, Mauna Kea is not yours. This Pai'aina is not yours. You just disassociated yourself from this, in a way, right? I get it. Because if we didn't own land, it's not ours. Whose is it? Oh, the foreigners. Why is it the foreigners? Well, they're the one who gave us the Mahele. And then we're back in that circle of who gave us the Mahele? Was it good or bad? Did we get land or not? Right? And then we're back in this web of entanglement. Right?
But then it's kind of like, what is this? What is the definition of own? Yeah.
And now we're getting to the precision of our ancestors, right? The fish that was this big had a name. The fish that was this big had a name. The fish that was this big had a name. The fish that was this big had a name. Today it's a fish. Today we generalize, today we're imprecise, right? We didn't follow one of those stars. We followed that star that rose in that point and fell in that point. Then another one rose and we knew the names and we were precise, right? Today Hawaiians didn't own land. What do you mean? Well, we didn't own land. I don't have to get any more specific than that. We didn't own land, right? Broad generalization. right? So if we define ownership of land in the Western sense, the bundle of sticks, it's the deep C acronym: disposition, exclusion, enjoyment, possession, control. Did Hawaiians not possess land? Did Hawaiians not exclude people from land? No, we shared. We had communal. What is the pu'uhonua? The executioner cannot cross this boundary. The state, the executioner, the government cannot cross this boundary and enforce. That's a boundary, right? We had exclusion. I could not come to your lo'i and take your kalo, right? Yes, we shared. Yes, we had values that shared, but was there the concept of theft? Yes. Theft means not yours, mine, right? I could not go to yours and take, right? Story of Umialiloa. Akahia Kuleana tells Umialiloa, go to Hilo, because your brother Hakau does not have jurisdiction in Hilo. What is that? A boundary, an exclusion, jurisdiction. Hakau has jurisdiction in Hamakua. Hakau does not have jurisdiction in Hilo. That's all traditional examples of exclusion, right? Did we have the E bundle of stick? Yes. Did Hawaiians possess land? Did Hawaiians control land? Did we grow kalo someplace and uala other place? Yes. What's the one bundle of stick we didn't have? The D, the disposition. We didn't sell the land, right? So if we're gonna say Hawaiians didn't own land, then we're gonna give away 4 of the 5 sticks. We're gonna give away 80% of the concept. And then when you're fighting for something like Mauna Kea, now you gotta fight back for that 80% that you already had. You're already behind the curve, right? We're behind the curve because we didn't interrogate and think with precision in the way our ancestors thought with precision. We're living with the generalities. Hawaiians didn't own land. And we're not going to define what Western ownership of land means. We're just going to say we did it differently. We didn't do that. Ku'e, resist that while not explaining what that is, right? And now we have enough bodies to do the explaining. We have the kids who are in the schools who can now dig into the depths and get at those details and learn the name of the star that rises in that house and sets in that house again, right? And get back to that precision, right? Hawaiians didn't own land. We're giving this up. When we did 4 of the 5 things. Kamehameha started the disposition thing, right? Kamehameha unifies the Pai'aina, and then what does he do to the 4 Kona uncles? Gives them that disposition stick that says you can give it to your ancestors. We are no longer land goes back to who you got it from. 4 Kona uncles, now it's hereditary succession, right? Now we got one of the D disposition, sell, convey, inherit, right? Too much detail, too complicated. Hawaiians didn't own land. Never mind Owama and Aveke, the same thing, right? And Aama and these other things, same thing. No, they were different, right? And we got to get back to that precision, right? And in that precision, we're not being academic, we're seeing the world in the way that our ancestors saw the world again. They paid attention, right? Detail mattered, right? Questions, comments?
So how did that become the popular narrative that Mahele was bad?
That was the only story that was told, and that story got repeated over and over. And 20 years later, we all know it, but none of us have. Ideas have genealogy, right? And in academia, we do lit reviews to get at the genealogy of ideas. Where did this idea come from? Nana ike kumu, what is the source, right? In the old days, the older generation in here, we were taught to look at footnotes and trace a footnote and trace a footnote and trace a footnote and trace a footnote, and that's what you did, right? Today, you just Google it and ask Siri. and you don't question, right? And that discipline of tracing the story, doing the genealogy of the idea, right? Not the who begot whom, but how did this story develop? Where did it come from, right? Who was the one who proved it true that Hawaiians didn't get land, right? That narrative is based on one statistic. Hawaiians got 28,000 acres of kuleana lands. Mahele is bad. 28,000 acres divided by 4 million, less than 1%. We've all seen the graph. We got less than 1%. Mahele bad. Mahele foreign imposition. All the answers to those 4 questions are the same.
How reliable is Siri and Google?
For
What are you getting? What perspective do they get? How educated are they, or are they just spewing information that they got from Wikipedia?
no, and that's the thing, right? It's information, but information out of context is one thing, right? That 28,000 acre statistic is not wrong. It's factually accurate. Hawaiians only got 28,000 acres of land. And this is why it's confusing, because it's true. But just because that's true, what scholars have done is shine the light on that one statistic, and the rest of this tent is in the dark, right? There's other facts in this tent. There's other stories in this tent. We just haven't shined the light on them and told those stories. Carlos Andrade does a book, Ha'ena, shines the light on Ha'ena. The irony is every single book that has come out that has studied an ahupua'a, people have gotten land. They all debunk the narrative Hawaiians didn't get land. Ha'ena, people of Ha'ena got land. They bought it from the Konehiki. Kahana, how the land was lost. People of Kahana got land. How the land was lost is the story he's telling. You have had to have gotten land in the first place in order to lose it, right? Everybody who's looking deep in a place, did the people of this place get land? Yes. That story is Hawaiians got land. When people rely on the generalization, 28,000 acres, 1% of the land, Hawaiians didn't get land. That's only the light is only shining right here. The rest of the room is dark. And that's what I mean by facts in context, right? Turn the light on in this whole tent. Let's look at all the evidence, all the stories. Let's find the story of Kohala. Let's find the story of Cana. Let's not make the story of one place on Oahu the story for the island of Hawaii. And that's what we've done, is taking this one thing and blown it up. And that's what we're trained to do in academia. We're trained to make laws, right? One of my favorite videos is the late Uncle Jerry Konanui in his Kalo biodiversity video. And he talks about the super kalo and the search for the one kalo that does everything, that grows everywhere. And he says, stop, wait. We get that one already. If you grow kalo next to the ocean, you have the ka'is, you have the kai varieties. If you grow in the windy place in Kohala, you got the pico varieties, that aerodynamic no ha'i he talks about, right? And you got, if you grow in the desert of Ka'u, you got this variety, right? And he talks about biodiversity, and he juxtaposes biodiversity with law-seeking one kalo. And that's the university. And we get trained to make laws, to make theories, because we want to tell the one story that is generalizable to India, that is generalizable to Aotearoa, that is generalizable to Canada, right? So that's where us from academia are our own worst enemies, because we are trained to think like that. And if we don't think, hey, what is the story of Ka'u? What is the story of Kohala? What is the story of this ahupua'a? 1,500 to 2,000 ahupua'as, right? Kalekoa did a talk at Kapiolani Community College the other day, and he talked about how, hey, the people from this ahupua'a on Maui grow kalo this way, people from here grow it this way, people grow it from this way. Who's right? They all grow kalo differently. Each place has its own story, but we rely on the Hawaiians didn't get land. right? We're not looking at the places to inform. We rely on the story, then take that story and make it the story of these different places and silence the voices of that place in the process, right? And then there's a disconnect because the evidence does not match the story. Hawaiians didn't get land. Hui in Haena. Hawaiians own Haena. I thought Hawaiians didn't get land. Right? But then you gotta know the story of 1500 to 2000 was to get there. Right? And then not many people have the time to look at all of those stories and say, hey, wait, all of these stories tell different things. It's not so simple, right? It's not Hawaiians didn't get land, right? Another story is the Isla Ohana in Cana on Oahu. The Islas all gave up their 9 brothers and sisters, gave up their rights to their kuleana lands. And instead, because Cana was government land, bought land straight from the government. 50 acres. 9 brothers and sisters, $25 each, 50 acres of land. 9 Hawaiians have 450 acres of land that don't show up in the 28,000 acre statistic. Right? Somebody buys 50 acres in Cana and then sells to another Hawaiian, sells to another Hawaiian, sells to another Hawaiian. That doesn't show up in the 28,000 acre statistic. That's the story of why your hand is up and your hand is up and your hand is up and your hand is up. Because we got land. We just didn't get it from that 128,000 acre statistic. And that's the factually true, and that's the problem. It's not a lie, it's true, it's just part of the story. And we haven't turned the light on in the whole room. Right? But then nobody asks you, why do you think the Mahele is bad? Mahele is bad, let's move forward. Right? Mahele is good because it was created by our ancestors, right? Like, the metaphor I like to use is the Mahele is Iolani Palace. You look at the exterior, looks like a Western creation, right? Looks like something you'd find in Europe, something you'd find, it's satisfying the international community. You go on the inside, koa floors, kukui motifs, kalo motifs. Interior, Hawaiian. Exterior, looks like a European palace, right? It's the opposite of the coconut metaphor. Coconut brown on the outside, white on the inside. You've assimilated into Western culture, right? Iolani Palace is brown on the inside, white on the outside. Exterior for Europe. Yes, we can do this palace thing, head of state thing. But we know who we are. We have koa. All the interior symbolism is from Hawaii, right? But we don't see it that way, right? Because the missionaries came, they gave us private property, they gave us Christianity, they did to us, they did to us, right? And that's the dominant narrative of the history books. They came and did to us. Hawaii. Who has electricity first? Buckingham Palace, Iolani Palace? Iolani Palace. How does Iolani Palace, how come they did to us? How come they gave us electricity before they gave it to themselves? Well, they weren't in control. We had Kamo'i Kalakaua who went and Edison and brought it, right? Lo'i, Ahupua system, anywhere else in the world? No, here only. Fish ponds, here only, right? We were the maka of the ihe. We were the tip of the spear. Today we're the shaft. We're the caboose. We're mimicking everything this culture does, everything that culture does. We're catching up. 126 years ago, we were the tip of the spear. Right? Electricity before the White House. Lo'i, nowhere else. Fish ponds. Kalakaua, first mo'i to circumnavigate the globe. 1843, one day ago, November 28th, 1843, first non-European country recognized in the world. Did the white man give that to us? No. Our ancestors left that legacy for us, and now we're starting to discover that, right? That whole story, Laku Oko'a, has helped to disrupt that story of they did to us, right? And we're starting to see and hear the story what we did for ourselves. Then in 1893, record scratch, there is an interruption. There is a huli, and that huli, we were driving this way, and now the overthrow comes, and now they turn the ship 180 degrees, and now we're going that way. The reality with land today is because of the overthrow, not because of private property. We lost land after the overthrow. Sugar bought land after the overthrow, not before. Okay? Yes, there is one sugar plantation or two sugar plantations that buy land in the 1850s. But sugar, the dominant industry, is leasing from the crown lands. In 1865, crown lands are made inalienable. You cannot buy the crown lands. The entity that comes to lease nearly the entirety, 900,000 acres that are remaining, is sugar. Right? They're not buying, well, they're not the dominant economy in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. What's the dominant economy in Hawaii in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s? Whaling begets. Who's from Waimea? I drive in Parker Ranch and I see, whoa, right? Paniolo, cattle. Why is cattle? Because whaling needs material, food that will last for 3 months on the high seas for the whaling ships. 1872, Pennsylvania discovers oil. William Penn, whaling starts to decline, sugar starts to rise. The entity leasing lands between 1865 and 1893 is sugar, and they're leasing from the crown. Right? Then they overthrow the government, create in the 1894 Constitution, Donald Trump Tower, that's all the government. That's not your personal property, that's now public property. Then they sell Trump Tower to themselves. That's the story of Hanalei. Have you guys seen The Descendants, Clooney? Hanalei is that story. Hanalei is not bought until post-1900, 1907, 1909, somewhere around there. They're leasing Hanalei, their lease comes up. They could not have sold Hanalei to themselves because under the Hawaiian Kingdom government, it was inalienable. They overthrow the government, change the law, confiscate the crown lands. In that same 1894 Constitution, make those lands alienable, now available for sale, and now 10 years later begin selling what they were leasing to themselves. Right? That's not the fault of the creation of private property, that's a result of the loss of governance. Right? One of these ideas that pervades historical lenses, how we interpret history, that pervades is this metaphor of opening the door. The Mahele opened the door. The Christianity in 1820 opened the door. Just because the door's open didn't mean I walked through it, right? Yes, it may have opened the door for certain things to happen, but if you're going to talk causality, did the Mahele cause lands to go from Hawaiian nationals to non-Hawaiian nationals? That's a whole different story. You have to prove that, not just, oh, we opened the door, so it eventually happened, so yeah, it's, right? Charles Manson, if his mom didn't give birth to him, then he wouldn't have done all those things. Well, a lot of things happened in his life too, right? Like causality is not just opening the door, right? And in the academic world, it's called necessary and sufficient conditions. It was necessary for private property to be created, but just because you had that creation didn't mean it caused X. Right? And that's where we have to be more precise with our thinking and not just the start of something, the birth of something is the end all. And that's part of the logic and rationale is, oh, the Mahele was the birth of this thing, so blame the birth, right? And it's not that simple because the facts, when you look at the facts, don't play out in that way. You just got 12 weeks in 12 weeks of a class in one semester, right? So I don't expect you to get it. We go back to the main point. The Mahele can be something that disassociates you from your ancestors. The Mahele can be something that connects you to your ancestors. Understand that if you're disassociating, you should have good evidence for that. I'm not here to tell you what to think. Here to tell you to think about it because it affects Hawaiian identity.
So the cultural perspective that our kupuna, so going back to the concept or perception of ownership, that they own none of it, but they stewarded all of it.
I think that perspective can still exist in the fact that we owned land. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. And we have these, I think the genealogy of this idea comes from this paradigm of resisting what they did to us, right? Hawaiians didn't own land. Mahele was a foreign imposition. We resist that notion. Thus, we counter that narrative with, yes, but we were stewards, not ownership. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that that's a particular way of seeing. That's a paradigm. That's a perspective. It's part of that genealogy, right? They did to us. We resist what they did to them. They owned the land. They created private property. We didn't own land, right? That's the ku'e. That's the resistance. That's just my read on. That may or may not be true, but that's how I see the genealogy of something like that coming. Out of resistance to this idea that the Mahele was foreign imposed, and then we start resisting that, forming our own narrative and our own story, but it's still part of that story, right? Here I'm giving you another story. Here's another way to look at this.
No, I think it's good. I'm just wondering where it all ties in. My family lives in Oahu, where people of the kahuku, the monster turbine, as one of the many things happening in the area and in Hawaii. And where does this make us stand? Are we resisting by standing up for what we think is what our kupuna wants us to do, to stand as kia'i of each aina, whether it's Waimanalo, Nanakuli, Kahuku, Mauna Kea? Where does that put us today? I mean, I'm thank you for clarifying. Like, I'm not here to tell you how to think, but I mean, I'm like, and what position do we take? Are we taking I mean, I just can't explain it. It's just what drives my bones, my blood, my iwi. I feel like I have to do it because we have to spend. Am I taking it from that victim standpoint of what had happened to my kupuna, and that's why I stand? Like, I wonder.
I don't know the answer. The fact that you're asking the question, we're making progress towards it, right? And I'm not saying anything against resistance. I'm not saying resistance is bad. I'm not saying we should not resist, right? But in my master's thesis, I offered a third space, right? So in this book titled Middle Ground, the West was metaphorically the ocean, the sea, the thing that did the eroding. The indigenous people were the rock, right? What eventually happened, water breaks down rock, right? And so that metaphor of resistance and assimilation resistance, right? And in that, I offered, well, what about surfing, right? Our ancestors, oh, yet another, we invented surfing, literally, right? Now, if we're talking metaphorically, this is where I think our ancestors were brilliant. I think they understood what they could control and what they couldn't control, right? Can you stop Western ships from coming in? No. Do you have control over how you deal with that? Yes. Is that a negotiation of power? Yes. You go play in the 20-foot surf, you don't know what you're doing, you get pounded. Right? You also become Jerry Lopez and Eddie Aikau and surf these waves and 20-foot sets, no problem. Right? And that metaphor of surfing, yes, the waves are coming. How do we react? Do we stay offshore? Oh, I don't want to deal with that. Well, you're going to get pounded, eroded away eventually. Or do you surf? Do you interact? Do you? Right? And that I would say the answer to your question is maybe in that third space of surfing. There's times to resist, but there's also times to, right? Kamehameha early on puts Hawaii as a British protectorate. Surfing. We don't have metal ships. If up and up, England, Britain, same resources, we'll kick your ass. Wooden spears against metal ships, I'm going to align with Britain, right? And that's where Kamehameha cedes Hawaii Island to King George. Kamehameha II goes back to figure out what is our relationship with King George, right? What he did there, same thing when he pledged allegiance to Kalaniʻopuʻu. I put myself under you, I pledge allegiance to you. Our ancestors had been playing that political game since time immemorial. He's not ho'ohaule in that situation, in my mind, right? But I'm a little more liberal with how, when foreigners and interact, I don't just see it in a, right? There's a little jujitsu there, there's a little playing with power, right? There's a little strategizing, right? And ku, path to power, lono, right? War, diplomacy. Diplomacy, literal diplomacy, diplomacy intermarrying, right? Diplomacy, hey, we're cousins, this genealogist and that genealogist, whoa, you guys can't fight. You guys are the same family, right? Like, constant negotiation of power, right? And I think our ancestors had a grasp on that. If you live 2,000 miles away from anything, you have to be a highly adaptive people. Matson's not coming to save you. Food is not coming on the next barge, right? How did lo'i get developed here, nowhere else in the world? Highly adaptive people, right? And please don't take that highly adaptive statement to say that I'm saying we can assimilate into or take it too far, right? Like, but electricity before the White House, highly adaptive people. Lo'i, highly adaptive people. Fish ponds, highly adaptive people. Either we were brilliant and got it right on our first crack for all of these things, or we had a process of constantly making better, boom. Hey, that's a good idea. I'm not going to reject it because it's not quote unquote traditional, right? Today, Ahupua'a system's the traditional system, right? What was the traditional system before Ahupua'a? Ahupua'a is created by Mailiku Kahi. Ahupua'a on Oahu. Ahupua'a is created by Umialiloa here on Hawaii Island. That was a revolution during that time. They went from not having the Ahupua'a system to having the Ahupua'a system. What is in our eyes today traditional was at that time, at its inception, revolutionary, right? But we have a hard time grappling with this because we're stuck on the assimilation resistance. We're either the rock or the ocean. No, we surfed, right? We got a new idea, we incorporated it. Right? Which is why we all drove up here in cars today and are on our smartphones today, right? We allow ourselves that liberality of engagement, of being in the world. But when we look at our history, we say, ooh, you should have ku'aid. You should have resisted. Why'd you do that? You should have, no private property. Should have stuck with tradition, right? I'm sure there were haters when Mailiku Kahi started the Ahupua'a system, and Umialiloa started Ahupua'a. Right? You guys just sucked all the good nuggets out of me in 45 minutes. What else, you are?
What were some ways that the aqua system, not that the Mahele is different than a Western system, or some other kind of Hawaiian elements? I don't think there really that would be one. Not everything could be discussed.
Yeah.
So what
So what are some of the Hawaiian elements of the system? So I'm a geographer, so I look at how geography is the study of how colonialism and other places went in and colonized other places and did things to other people's land, right? And in all of those situations, if you're going to read about colonialism, you're going to read about mapping, because the first thing that what Britain did when it went to India was created a mapping system. What Britain did when it went to New Zealand was it brought its system into New Zealand. I was at a talk, I forget his name, but he's a Maori respected in the community and also Maori high in governance in New Zealand. And he was telling the story about New Zealand, and he said, hey, I just came back from England and I felt right at home. Why did he feel right at home? All the street names are the same. All the place names are the same. The grid system that's used. They brought Britain's system and imposed it on New Zealand. You go buy a house today, where does your land title go to? A land that's in an ahupua'a, that's in a moku, that's on an island, right? The Mahele book, Hawaii transitions to private property without maps. And before you jump on me and say there was a map, there were maps drawn, but there was no mapping system, right? You go read the Mahele book, this chief got Kailua Kaneohe, and this ahupua'a and that ahupua'a, and this chief got ahupua'a, ahupua'a, ahupua'a. List of place names. Are you telling me that the missionaries who gave us, I'm being playful here, who gave us the Mahele knew the 2,000 place names? No. Hawaiian system. The first reality of the Hawaiian system is the fact that is the Mahele book. List of Hawaiian place names. If you're imposing yourself, why are you using the traditional system? Why are you using the Hawaiian system? Why aren't you bringing over the public land survey system, township and range, the northeast corner of the northwest corner of the this, in this township, in this range, right? What happened looks Western. Iolani Palace. How it happened, what got built inside, Hawaiian. Right? Second example, perspective. On the one hand, the Mahele is a division of land. How I see the Mahele is a division of rights. Well, who had rights in land? First the government, second the chiefs, third the native tenants. Well, who said that? The 1840 Constitution and the 1846 Principles. We have what other indigenous people are fighting to have their customs acknowledged into law, right? You have law, you have statutes, you have written law, you have customs. In America, you have to get your customs acknowledged in order for it to be seen equal to the law. All of our stuff is incorporated into law. Why? Because we're in charge of the country. Because in 1843, Kamehameha III gets Hawaii recognized as a country. That should clue us into the fact that we were driving the airplane. We think somebody else was driving the airplane, but we were driving the airplane. Between unification and 1893, Hawaiians were in charge. Yes, there was somebody who was a foreign advisor, right? But that foreign advisor was an advisor, not the president. He didn't have the power to make the thing happen, right? And when you look at how the Mahele happened, you see how our if I was a missionary, I'm not saying the government, the chiefs, and the people all have equal rights in land. I'm saying the king, it's yours. I take out one person, 4 million acres is mine. Right? If you have this undivided interest thing, if you have the land belongs to the government, the chiefs, and the people, now you have to divide out undivided interest. This is where we get the subject to the rights of native tenants that still bugs the state of Hawaii today. That is, they want you to think you have the right to pick tea leaf. What it meant in 1843 was you had a right to a house lot. Right? So we go from you had a right to a house lot to you have the right to pick tea leaf. Hawaiians didn't own land, you have the right to tea leaf. Come join me on my side. Hawaiians owned land, you have a right to a house. You want the tea leaf or the house? Right? And this is what I mean. These are these subtle, subconscious things. We don't realize we're giving up the house in exchange for tea leaf. Right? If that were true, the Mahele is the most misunderstood thing. I can sit here and show you quotes where title guarantee doesn't define terms, where chinen doesn't define terms. None of your primary source documents define the 20 terms that are necessary. Go pick up the Dictionary of Hawaiian Legal Land Terms, and the 20 terms, the 20 critical terms to understanding the Mahele are not defined there. With that lack of definition, we have Hawaiians making very creative interpretations of what they think terms mean because they're trying to correct a historical injustice, which is different, another layer of perspective. Interpreting things to correct a historical injustice today within the realm of the state of Hawaii law, legal system, versus understanding the Mahele in the context of the time it was created, right? Arguably, I attempt to try to explain the Mahele in the context of its time. Other people have explanations of the Mahele to fix a historical injustice to get land back today. And for me, that's problematic because then you might start to win battles, but you lose the war because you contort the whole thing to win. And not that someone getting their house lot back is a small thing, but if we're going to give up the long-term, big-term goal and throw dirt in the water that makes the whole thing muddy just so someone can get back one piece of land, that for me is not pono. And I'm not saying people going for their land is not pono. The way in which we do it, muddying the waters for everyone else, so that everyone else now, the stream water downstream is not clean, that is a different thing, right? So there's all kinds of layers to this perspective. Are you correcting a historical injustice? Are you trying to explain and understand something in the context of the time, right? And all of these things tangle up, and you don't realize how you get pulled into a particular genealogy by just one little thing. Right? Also, on a more specific level, there were what is the word? When you buy a piece of land and hold on to it for future value? Say again? Speculation. There were anti-speculation laws, right? So if you wanted to buy land from the government, you had to be on the land, possessing the land. There was no speculation. I'm going to buy 2,000 acres and sit on it and then profit from it later, right? Mahele, demographics, biggest thing, right? 400,000 people, 1850, 80,000 Hawaiians, 1890, 40,000 Hawaiians. 40,000 Hawaiians. That's one person per 50 acres. 80,000 Hawaiians, 80,000 divided by 4 million acres, one person per 50 acres of land. There was no land scarcity. Today, we look at the Mahele from a perspective of land scarcity. Oh my God, the median price of a house is $800,000. There's no land. And we bring that, and then we take that and we interpret a fact that we see from 1850. That's not the reality. I do not have, for every one of us, there's 49 empty seats. I don't have to make you get out of your seat for you to have somewhere to sit. I can choose one of those 49 other seats. There's land abundance in 1850. There's 80,000 people in Hawaii. 80,000 people is the current population of Molokai and Kauai. Maui's vacant, Hawaii Island's vacant, Oahu is vacant. Take those 80,000 people and spread them over all the land. You have land abundance at that time, right? But when we come at it in 2019, land scarcity, oh my gosh, where am I gonna live? Where are my kids gonna live? Oh my gosh. And then we start interpreting history that way, inconsistent, right? So that's another layer of, you gotta understand, you gotta put yourself in that place, in that time, right? Not bring today's baggage and think that that was yesterday's reality. Totally different. Totally, totally different, right? 20 years ago, we were worried about Russia. Now we're not worried about Russia. Now it's North Korea. Now it's, the context matters, right? It's different. Questions? Because I know you all gonna still walk out of here thinking the Mahele is bad. But it's gonna take you hearing this 100 times. Because what am I up against, right? Have you ever heard anyone say Hawaiians owned land? I haven't, right? The 99.99% dominant narrative, if you go ask everyone in this place, they're gonna, and you say, did Hawaiians own land? Did Hawaiians not own land? I would give you $100 for everyone who tells you Hawaiians owned land. Not literally, don't take me up on, hey, you said, you got these three guys, right? If you give me $10 for everyone who says the other thing, then I'll play the game with you, right? But it's a dominant narrative, and we're up against that narrative, and we got to start questioning, right? We got to understand why we think the way we think. We have been indoctrinated for 125 years. We are not going to start thinking clearly in a month, in 3 months. It took us 125 years to create this reality. It's going to be a slow process. How do we jumpstart that slow process? By questioning why you think the way you think, and not just accepting things because Siri said, because Google said, oh, that's the truth, because I read it on Wikipedia, right? You watch my videos on YouTube, don't believe anything I say, but go track down the primary source document. The definition's there, right? My definitions aren't my definitions. My definitions are the definitions I found in a primary source document, right? I get blown up on social media all the time for my interpretation of the Mahele, but I have not ever seen anyone who disagrees with me show content. They character assassinate me, right? And this is the common thing. They character assassinate a whole lot of people, but nobody's dealing with the content. Nobody's saying, oh, that definition is wrong because this document says. Oh, he says royal patent grants are this, but here's a Hawaiian document, not a French law dictionary, right? I'm showing you Hawaiian documents that have these definitions, right? And that's, the Mahele is misunderstood, big time.
I think social media has a way of making it easy to fight and disagree and whatnot because they're not anywhere near you. You can be seen or get punched in the face or whatnot. It's distant. So it's kind of the easy way to just bicker and run away.
And it's all the headlines, right? It's all the clickbait culture, right? Like if you have to go look for a whole hour and you have to actually look and research something, you have to go look at the depth of something, right? Like it's easy to just say, oh, Hawaiians didn't own land and not have to explain it. right? But for me to explain it, it took this hour, and it would probably take another 3 hours or 4 hours, and you coming back 20 or 30 times to get, oh, that's what he meant, right? That process takes a lot longer than I can go put out clickbait, Hawaiians didn't own land, and oh yeah, that becomes truth. One of the ways that became truth is, if you look at the literature, the idea that Hawaiians didn't get land, or the Hawaiians didn't have money, right? That's a common thing that we put back on the 1850s. Hawaiians didn't have money. That was a hypothesis to explain why Hawaiians got only 28,000 acres of land. I can show you the quote where it says, "Nobody has proven this to be true. This is one of the reasons, potential reasons." You go look at citations today, Hawaiians didn't get land. How did we get from this is one of the potential reasons to a truth? Hawaiians didn't own land, or Hawaiians didn't have money. One of the reasons that explains the 28,000 acre statistics may have been this to this is true. I can show you the genealogy of the idea. I can show you but all of these kinds of things have become truths. What was once hypothesis is today truth, because we have not interrogated where did that idea come from. How do we know that that is true? We just accept it as truth because we've heard it 100 times. And it's our own people telling us this, right? That's no disrespect to any of those people who say this, but that's the messed up part, is now we're telling ourselves this. So it seems even more plausible, right? And when your own people are telling you, you question even less, right? If Ige was telling you that, then you'd be like, oh, wait. You'd be investigating, right? But our own Hawaiian scholars telling us, and oh yeah, genealogy have ideas. Ideas have genealogy. Yeah? Are we at 3 o'clock?
Donovan, before you leave, do you call it the Great Mahele?
I do call it the Great Mahele. Yeah, because the dividing of interests was a tremendous feat. It was a huge accomplishment. But I don't want to take into the next person's time because we're already over 3 o'clock. I can answer questions on the outside.
Thank you, Donovan. That was awesome.
Thank you.